course. Really? It's working again? Welcome back! And now you've got Brasse. And as Amy would say on the podcast, actually, and we're back! I couldn't resist doing that, sorry Amy. Now, on the screen with me, that's my husband Alluvian. As you can see, I did in fact marry a ranger. As a matter of fact, I suspect that's part of the major appeal, is the fact that I am a healer with the res. So we are going to show you a little dungeon that I built, and then after that we're going to show you a dungeon in progress where I will demonstrate a couple of cool things about Dungeon Maker, including that secret trick that I mentioned earlier, and you can ask any questions that you might like and I'll fill you full of misinformation. So here we go. Let's go find the Dungeon Maker. There we are. Now this particular one of mine is called Badger, 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 Badger. Yes, it's named after the internet tune. If you'd like to sing along at home, feel free. Loading, please wait. I'm really curious to find out. I don't know if the devs are tracking the figures yet or not, but I'd love to know how many people have tried to make a dungeon so far. I have seen some absolutely astonishing ones. Eric and I ran through, or Alluvian I guess we'll call him by his given name in game. Alluvian and I ran through one where you couldn't even tell what the original dungeon layout was because they had converted it into this amazing orcish mine, and I cannot imagine how long it took them to put that together. We also saw some incredibly creative ones that were done over Frostfell as well. So here we are. As you see, when you load up the Dungeon Maker, you're no longer yourself and you select an adventurer. Now I'm quite fond of the Avazek Challenger if I'm soloing. It's a really good tank class, but I'm going to go with something a little different. Ooh, let's see, what shall we do? You know, it's terrible. I spend so much time choosing the characters. Oh, that one's got such a huge butt. Let me go with a little tiny Yarly instead. Once you click on your avatar that you want, you hit ready, and I can see that Mr. Alluvian here has gone with the amygdalin squiggy face. Alright, so this is the Badger Badger dungeon. When you first enter a dungeon, the first tip I will tell you is don't move off the start point until you make yourself aware of the surroundings. Yes, that's exactly right. Okay, because we are now under attack already. And we'll kill those off. Now, in most dungeons, people were asking about how you can tell stories. One very good way of telling stories in a dungeon is to set up a book. With the books, you can actually tell a bit of the story, a little bit about the layout, or a little bit about what people can expect. Heck, you can even advertise all your other dungeons, and that's a terrific way of giving people some hints. I've seen some dungeons where there are books placed in every single room that help you tell the story as you move along through the dungeon. So, Mr. Amygdalin there, oh, you can see, look, I'm just going to sit here and leech Dungeon Maker points off this guy because he's my husband and he's very kind to kill all this stuff for me. Now, if he dies, it's because I'm not paying any attention whatsoever. Now, the thing I should mention is this is layer of scale. You're probably pretty familiar with this layout. And, this is terrible. I have trouble talking and playing at the same time. So you'll recognize this layout, of course, but the interesting thing is that you can change the layout quite significantly, really. Simply by using things that are either house items that you loot, get quests, you buy them off the marketplace. Oh, look, see, we're all going to die. Isn't it terrible? I should be paying more attention. Oh, you'll see. Oh, sorry. Oh, I did. Okay. While we're looking at the revive screen, yeah, I don't have speakers on here, so I have no idea what the volume's like. Volume. Oh, look, max volume. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Let me know how that is. And then I'll revive. You're always going to revive right by the entrance. Oh, there. Okay. He beat those up. All right. So we're not going to go too terribly far in here, but as you can see, you can actually cause your creatures in the dungeon to do a little bit of pathing. Oh. And you can hide creatures inside crates and that sort of thing as well, which is really handy. One of the best dungeons we went into, it was moderately challenging. We got to the final room and we were feeling very, very full of ourselves. And the problem is we ran up to a big construction that they had. Oh, that looks really neat. And a bunch of mobs came out from inside of it. Really caught us unawares. We thought, oh yeah, you got us. That was terrific. Now there are some things like you see these little leafy green plants here. Those you can loot right up in the Destiny of Velius, just outside of the big city there, and they're ever so free. So I use them a lot. And as you can see, I'm not paying any attention at all. So as you can imagine, the Badger dungeon has a theme of badgers and mushrooms. And you can pretty much guarantee what comes at the end of that. The important aspect of designing dungeons for other people to play is to make them entertaining. Don't make them so freaking hard that you get bored from dying so many times. And this dungeon, although we did get killed because I wasn't paying attention, it is actually soloable. And the way you decorate a dungeon can be fairly minimalist, especially for those folks who are trying to maximize the number of dungeon marks. But if you put a lot of decor in, one thing you have to keep in mind is to make sure that you do not make it such that players can get hung up on the geometry, which, especially because some of the avatars are quite large, like you can see the Amygdalin warrior, he's going to have a really tough time fitting through tiny spaces. And that can be really problematic. And as you can see, some of these mobs will actually say things because I've scripted them to say stuff. Oh, now look, I'm being stupid. I'm a caster and I'm running ahead. That's probably the first thing that you don't want to violate in a dungeon. And we're just going to go as far as... Oh, look at that sneaky guy. There. Fix his wagon. I realize I'm quite cruel and heartless. That one took an arrow to the knee. I didn't say that out loud. So we've gone through the badger. Now we're into the mushroom bit. But that's about all you really need to see of this dungeon. Oh, notice Alluvian pulling carefully, unlike he does in real dungeons. Look, he goes... out, lay some bait, here they come. This is why I make a terrible caster. I have absolutely no constraints and I'll just run right in there and get myself killed. So I know a lot of people like the concept of playing their own avatars in these dungeons, but to be quite honest, I like these little things that you can pick up in the world. Some of them you can buy for station cash. The other avatars are drops that you can get while you're just playing around in the world. I like playing a monster. Look at how cute and plumpy I am. That's almost as good as being a real dwarf. So again, adding pathing to the mobs makes it possible. Like in this dungeon, if you pay attention to the pathing, you really, really can solo it. If you're not paying attention to the pathing, you're going to die horribly within just a couple of minutes. Are they getting bored yet? Shall we move into the building? Okay. All right, so we're going to exit this. How do we exit this before? Let me think. Oh, because we can run right back to the entrance. Or I can just let Alluvian die. Stop pulling! Frickin' rangers. Alright, we'll just kill these guys off. Mushroom soup. What? Oh, really? Slash house. Oh, look at that. That's a neat trick. I didn't even know that. Alright, I'm leaving the dungeon. Alright, Alluvian type slash house. And we'll just wait till he zones out here as well. Actually, he probably doesn't even have to do that because I'm going to go edit this next dungeon. So thank you very much, Alluvian, for joining me on that. Letting me die horribly. Really appreciate it. So this is one that I've got in progress, and it's Brasse's Pub Crawl. So let's go edit that. This one is a large dungeon. The Badger dungeon, really small. It's only 4 rooms and a couple of hallways. You can run it in 30 minutes or so. Now this one, I wanted to make it very much like a whole series of little tiny pubs. You can see I've got my book here. I haven't actually written very much in it yet. Now, these are doors, and the doors actually function, which is really neat. But when you're editing a dungeon, opening and closing doors every couple of seconds gets to be a real drag. So instead, what we do, a really quick trick here, is just to raise the door just enough so that you can scoot underneath of it. And then just before you publish it, put the doors back down. And I've done that for all of them. Now, I would quickly want to show you something. I wanted the ability to put POIs in dungeons. And I couldn't find a way to do it. And there was no hint that it was going to be coming. So look at that. As you approach here, it tells you the name of the tavern. Now, first I tried these ordinary signs, but they don't speak. You actually have to hover over them. But in-game, we have speaking signs. They're available, the ones that I got, they're available through the, let me just examine here. These ones are the Gorwin signs. I like them because they're very inconspicuous. You can hide them behind the scenery and so on. And they're what are called token signs. So I went to the Gorwin City Festival. I found about like 10 of these, stuck them in my backpack, run into my dungeon, set them up and realized, oh crap! Am I allowed to say that on the air? Yes, it's teen rated. I'm pretty sure I can say crap. I said, oh crap, said I. I can't edit these things in my dungeon. I was so despondent and sad. But what I learned is, if you take your signs, your token signs, into your own house, set them up on the wall, you can edit them in your house. And then stick them back in your backpack, go to your dungeon, and guess what? They still work. So in that way, you can simulate POIs, which is really terrific. And you can see I've got a lot of piles of stuff hanging around. That's because I took up crafting specifically to support me Dungeon Maker addiction.
The players are saying that it doesn't work in play mode, only edit mode.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. Well, in that case, we have a solution for that too, because I was telling Akil about that earlier, and he said, you know, we can fix that. So I will just pester him until that is done, because I love the concept of adding POIs to games so that you can just do that sort of thing. Anyway, if you become a carpenter and start doing your own crafting for dungeons, expect that this is going to take up most of your waking hours. My carpenter is now like level 68 or 69, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, I've just picked up a whole new crafting profession. Some of the recipes, like for these mugs, were available only during Brew Day. Guess what? Brew Day's coming up in March, people. So if you don't have those recipes and the components needed for that, then your opportunity is coming up really, really soon. But in this one, let's see, let's run right through here. As you can see, I've done very little but placeholder work for most of these. But I want to take you through an area that I actually did do a lot more work on. And that would be the Kellethan Pub. Not to be mistaken for the Kellethan Pub, which is really close to our event location at Fanfare. And you'll also notice when you're in edit mode, things load a lot slower. When you're actually in play mode, they load faster. But I was inspired by the aforementioned dungeon where somebody had made a really neat place that you couldn't even recognize it. Now, this is fairly recognizable, but it is, in fact, using the pillars that were already in the room, and the pillar tops have now become the basis for me tables. The cool, flashy lights still show through them. And so you can have these double-decker dungeons. Now, one thing that does happen still, and it's another thing I'd like to add to the devs list of things to look into, is the fact that if you set mobs on top of objects, platforms, that sort of thing, they fall through. But this eventually will be the only way to get through here, is to at least go up on this platform and down the other sides. Oh, anybody recognize these fungus things? They actually are in the Moonlight Enchantments in one of the grottos. trying to remember which one, Brownie Grotto, these funguses are actually a rare item that you can pick up when you're harvesting the other funguses in the place. But anyway, it's really neat to do this sort of thing, and of course in addition to the stuff that you have placed, let's shut off the creatures, and the increased level things as well. I've got a number of those, and that makes it really nice because you can increase the base level of the creatures that you're looking at. Oh, the other thing I'm going to have to show you is me beer room. Isn't that terrible? Oh, you can see all the bottles. It's when you're building your dungeon, just throw everything into one corner so it's easy to get, and then run through and place them properly later on. Goatbeard's Tavern. These funky looking floor tiles, these ones right here, they are also gotten through the moonlight enchantments or something. Yes, really neat stuff you can get. Look everywhere for things. Look for things on the broker, and if you can't afford them, find out where those buggers got them. Down this hallway here, we've got the misty stuff. You can get that very cheap on the broker, actually. Oh, sorry?
Which layout is this?
This is one of the first Chardock one, the one that came with the expansion, the collector's edition. So you can really, really mess around with the layouts. If you just have a look at this from here, you can see that the layout is very basic, but you can do a lot with it. So these misty blobs here, very inexpensive on the broker, and they actually came out with the Halloween event. So you never know where you're going to get stuff. And this is the Sacred Ale storage area. And this is going to be really, you can recognize, of course, a lot of the Frostfell stuff, and I've got a few of the creatures around here and that sort of thing. Now, one thing I've done in this dungeon, I'm going to check with legal to see if I can run my own private competition outside of SOE stuff, but I've taken a lot of things that I had hanging around me house, special quest rewards and that sort of thing, and I've just put them around as little special Easter eggs. And if legal gives me blessing to run this as a private citizen of Norath, then I'm going to have a contest for the first 10 people who can identify all of me little tiny Easter eggs that I've put into these dungeons. Now in this one here, this hall is very large and cavernous and quite dark in the original, but it shows you how you can use floor and wall tiles that you can build yourself in order to completely change the shape. You can see I've divided the down below there and changed the color of the walls and the floor. There is just no limit to the number of things that you can do in these dungeons. And if you run enough other people's dungeons, you can steal their most awesome ideas and pretend you invented them yourself, because there are some really, really cool things out there. Has anybody got any specific questions about the dungeons? You all know about the fact that just like housing, you can increase the size of everything in your dungeons, so you can make things either really small or really large. I love that. And the fact that you can raise things off the floor, you don't even have to put any supporting struts around them. And as far as the mobs go, oh, these misty tiles as well, also gotten through the moonlight enchantments. Of course, that comes up with what, the 21st, 22nd, something like that?
Are you willing to share what server this is on so players can go visit it?
Oh, sure, I play on Crushbone server. This is my character, Brasse. I love talking to people when you're on Crushbone, no problem. I can't fix your CS issues. I can't fix the bugs in game. God, you don't want me touching code, I can tell you that. But always happy to talk to people about Dungeon Maker, the game in general, the universe, how things should be better run. I don't talk about politics, sex, or religion unless I've had too much wine. And believe me, feel free to talk to me anytime. If I don't want to talk to people, I got plenty of private alts I can retire to. So if you want to come hang out on Crushbone anytime. I also have a few characters on other servers, but look, I've got so many alts on Crushbone alone that I just can't keep up. Oh, you might recognize that. What? Amy's laughing. Somebody said something.
They would like to give you some wine and have you log on to EverQuest.
Yeah, no, not going to happen. You know, I like me job here. You'll have to catch me at Fanfare for the too much wine bit. I just wanted to mention that this contraption here, isn't that awesome? And that was something that somebody built. I think it's a Tinkerfest item, isn't it? And it's really cool, and of course I made it as big as humanly possible, oh, as dwarvenly possible. Oh yeah, the super mechanized Thurgadin distillery. And this is in me end room, and of course I haven't finished doing it. Earlier we were talking about how cheap some of the mobs are to purchase. But some of them are quite expensive, like these really funky griffins. They were pricey. Don't ask me how much I spent on them. Somebody made a small fortune off me because I really wanted them. So let's talk a little bit about the creatures themselves. I think you've probably seen this, that you can flavor text. This is where you can actually tell people, or tell the mobs that when they aggro on somebody, they can yell, you know, bug. Oh, they won't let me say that. Let's see, what can I say? Bug off, you miscreant. Once you've done that, and you can set those, I should have gone further into that. Once you've done that, you can actually set messages that this creature will say upon aggro, battle, when they die, when they're at half health, and that sort of thing. What I will say that based on my own findings and my own experiences is that you can't set a flavor text for every one of these conditions because the mobs die fairly quickly. Even the boss mobs, as you know, are relatively easy to take down, and they won't have time to cycle through all their messages. So what I would advise, if you can, is pick one line per mob. And usually you've got 2 or 3 in the same general area, but this flavor text can really help to tell your story as players come through the dungeon. And I love that. Something you should know is they were talking about how the dungeons are somewhat modular in design. If you set a mob to wander, that mob will not leave the room. If you set a mob to wander in a hallway, that mob will stay in that hallway. So it's a really terrific way to contain where your creatures go. I quite like it. And the patrol, although, you know, it is quite limiting, but if you patrol them around a couple of objects, do check to make sure they don't go through the objects because that just looks wrong and then people will never think that you're the brilliant game designer that you actually are. And yeah, I don't want to keep you guys all night, but sure, log on to Crushbone if I'm there. If you see me on as Brasse, I'm available to talk. Happy to talk to you all the time. And I'd love to see other people's dungeons as well. I'm going to have to try to level up some more characters on other servers so I can see them because I've seen some truly inspiring ones. Any other questions before we log off here? Okay. We can certainly talk about that. Oh, and also these things all have the default names. Once you're actually set, never leave the default names. That's just stupid. It's a really easy way to make things different. Instead of calling these things flying snakes or whatever they are, they're icy air currents. And of course, here we have these aviacs. They're all guardian of the Hefeweiss and guardian of the Kirsch, you know, guardian of the ale and the spirits and so on. Be creative with your naming. I saw one dungeon on Crushbone where there was a running argument going on the level 1 to 9 channel, as you know happens. And this one guy built a dungeon, and all of the people he had arguments with, and even some of his friends, he named creatures in the dungeon after them, and I thought that was pretty funny too. Anyhow, thank you very much for joining us on this Dungeon Maker episode, and please try a dungeon today. Build one, run one. They're so much fun. And I guess we'll sign off now. Thank you, and tune in next week. Well, do we know what we're casting next week?
Planetside 2.
Oh, my Lord. Planetside 2 is having a webcast next week. I'm going to have to tune into that one myself. Thanks again, and have a great evening. Bye, all.
Sony.